Have you ever had the desire to just round up all the enemies on screen into a giant floating meatball, set that meatball on fire, and let it burn to a crisp before vaporizing it into dust? Probably not as specific, but here's a setup featuring Zephyr and this weapon with a build you would hate to miss. Yeah, promise I won't do that again in this video. It's almost on the same level of insanity as that Zymos 12k crit video I did a while back, so I imagine this will be an interesting watch for some, if not all of you. A couple of disclaimers before we get started. I am not exactly a Zephyr main. Please excuse me for the poor displays of Zephyr throughout the video. I'm just not a bird woman enjoyer. Downvote me, I am irredeemable. And the number on the thumbnail refers to status damage vulnerability, not status chance. Can't exactly fit an explanation into a tiny image, so I'll do that right now. The idea with this entire setup is to group enemies up together using Zephyr's fourth ability, Tornado. Apply heat procs onto those enemies with weapons or abilities, or in the case of this setup, Firewalker. After having set the helpless enemies alight, you then strike them with the hate, equipped with at least the Burning Hate mod, resulting in profits burned to a crisp. That actually sounds like a bad thing. What basically happens here is on hit, the Burning Hate mod causes enemies already inflicted with heat status to, in a way, receive 120% more status damage. Think of dots like bleed, with the enemy now being weaker to each tick. If you got melee influence equipped, that will help spread status effects between enemies in the tornado and immediate vicinity if you were to proc electric that successfully triggers said event, which is why we'll be modding the hate for electric instead of heat. All this damage can be amplified even further in a multiplicative manner, I believe, if you also have stuff like melee elementalist or a faction damage mod on. In the case of exo officers, primed smite Grenier works better, at least based on eyeballing science. So here's a bit of an explanation as to how I got that 2400% status damage vulnerability number. I tried simplifying it as much as possible for ease of understanding, but my abilities are limited, so it is what it is. When testing in the simulacrum, I usually spawn 20 exo officers with the steel path modifier, which isn't really relevant here, but as I said before, when striking the enemies or a tornado with a hate equipped with the Burning Hate mod, all the enemies trapped within that tornado sort of get hit with the hate once at the same time, so they're all now 120% more vulnerable to status damage. Now, assuming melee influence triggers immediately on hit or strike of the hate weapon, which with the setup shown in this video happens almost always from what I've seen, and assuming the Burning Hate effect, the 120% status damage vulnerability, is made transmissible by melee influence, then each enemy in the tornado is now getting hit with that Burning Hate effect from all others nearby, plus itself. I don't exactly have hard proof that melee influence is carrying that Burning Hate effect, if you will, but based on just simple testing and observation, the enemies do seem to succumb to the procs a lot faster with both the Burning Hate mod and melee influence on. Even just having Burning Hate on without influence leads to a drastic reduction in effectiveness of this entire setup. Right, here's a summary of all the things you'll need to achieve the results as portrayed in this video. A Zephyr, of course, with maybe a build focused on duration and range. No strict requirements for mods here. I recently had a conversation with Mr. Ween on poor man ephemeras like Firewalker and thought it would be neat to include them for this video. It's also the main method for guaranteed heat procs, which is what we'll need for triggering Burning Hate. You can, of course, use other ways to achieve this. Loki's decoy is subsumed in place of airburst here just for fun. I watched a Bone Widow, by the way, essentially kill itself in the Entrati labs. I imagine you can engage in a bunch of tomfoolery with this. Otherwise, you could always put whatever else in here that's more sensible and swap out that decoy augment mod for something like rolling guard for status immunity, for example. For the hate, here's a sample build. I know, it's got a riven in there, and yes, it certainly does help improve damage output, but excluding it does not suddenly break or invalidate the entire setup. As stated before, Burning Hate is absolutely required. You can obtain this as a reward for reaching rank 15 with the current season or volume of Nightwave. Melee influence may be a little harder to obtain, but certainly does help with the overall effectiveness of the setup. Blood Rush is probably better suited for a build like this, but if you're more into heavy attacks with the hate, then Sacrificial Steel is probably still fine. Just keep in mind, it will be expensive. You can probably swap out Drifting Contact for something else. I just wanted to see what half a minute of combo duration felt like. You don't have to get everything perfect here, as the hate is one of those weapons with an Incarnate upgrade available to it, so even if the Riven here had worse negative stats, I am pretty confident I could fix her with Incarnate upgrades. And here they are. These are all subject to personal preference, of course, though you probably want Subtle Force for the 4th evolution anyway. Finally, get yourself a reliable way for inflicting heat procs, maybe even in a wide AoE. I decided on Firewalker for the funny, but you could go with weapons like the Tenet Cyclone or even abilities like Thermal Sunder and Fire Blast. Those are probably the smarter thing to do, just like with Green Man Gaming. Sorry for the interruption, guys. Yeah, ads suck, especially on YouTube, but how about a helpful recommendation? I bet you all buy your games on Steam, which is great, but what if there's a way to get those games and some free stuff on the side? Well, all you gotta do is just buy them on Green Man Gaming, where even if you get something at full price, you'll still receive benefits in the form of XP, which is part of their loyalty program. All the Steam keys sold here are also sourced directly from the publishers, so no middlemen or scammy nonsense. I've also found that sometimes there's better deals here than on even Steam. Not to mention that a portion of any money spent on Green Man Gaming does go towards ecosystem restoration initiatives, which is pretty cool to see. It's kinda nice to know that your dollar would go further than just ending up in some OnlyFans Thoughts bathtub. So the next time you're thinking about buying games, it's probably worth checking out Green Man Gaming through the links in the description. Even just clicking on them to see what's on sale today does help out the channel a lot.
Please note that for adblock users, the links in the description may get flagged. Do not be alarmed. Your internet history is safe. Purchases made on the site are recorded solely for the purposes of crediting the channel appropriately. It helps Mello afford some time for the month.
So yeah, feel free to whitelist and save those links, save yourself some money, and get gaming today. I did some quick testing this time around by playing Steel Path Alchemy in that same place again. I mean, it's kinda fun and looks less boring than Void Survival, when the screen isn't full of particles blasting my eyes, that is, with mixes of colors I probably haven't experienced in real life. Suffice to say, this setup is excellent for eliminating large hordes of enemies near instantly. The only things you would need to watch out for are, of course, the Eximus units and elite enemies like Rogue Necromechs. Acolytes, well, they stand no chance against a properly built hate, as most of you know. Trying really hard not to make any more puns. Please do consider checking out the description for cool, fun surprises. Not really, it's just different funnels for giving me money. I would still appreciate it very much though. Otherwise, I've got more videos right here.